Please give a warm welcome to Professor Bob Thurman of Tibet House.
Thank you very much, everyone. Nice to see everyone here with all the wonderful Tibetan flags. And on this wonderful day, and today His Holiness's message, it was music to my ears when he spoke so frankly and openly about how the Chinese are behaving, about how he said, as a consequence, the language and culture and traditions of Tibet, which reflect the true nature and identity of the Tibetan people, are gradually fading away. As a consequence, Tibetans are increasingly being assimilated into the larger population. In Tibet, repression continues to increase with numerous, unimaginable, and gross violations of human rights, denial of religious freedom, and the politicization of religious issues. All these take place as a result of the Chinese government's lack of respect for the Tibetan people. This is really powerful speech from His Holiness. These are major obstacles the Chinese government deliberately puts in the way of its policy of unifying nationalities, which discriminate between the Tibetan and Chinese people. Therefore, I urge the Chinese government to bring to an immediate halt such policies, and so do we. We also urge them to stop. And we urge them to stop, and that is the piece that I would like to try to contribute here today in respect of your great effort and your continuing to show up and to march and to wave the flag and to create this wonderful banner here with the 5 Olympic rings with death skulls inside of them. Excellent. And blood dripping from them. This is excellent. The piece I want to contribute today, though, because there is a tendency, even when we protest, even when we work to support a movement that is a movement against great odds, and the Tibet movement seems to be a movement against great odds. A small number, Gandhi, for example, was able to march nonviolently against the British, because the Indian people were hugely outnumbered the British colonialists in that case. But in this case, the small number of Tibetans, 6 million, are against the 1.3 billion Chinese people. But on the other hand, the whole world that knows about Tibet supports the Tibetan people. So actually, we still have a 5-to-1 majority, as long as we let the world know the truth of Tibet. We are not outnumbered, but the Tibetans alone are outnumbered. But the Tibetans with all of their friends worldwide, in all the countries where they have lived, are not outnumbered. And therefore, there is a danger, though. Like when I meet people, they say, oh, you're doing this Tibet thing. Isn't that a lost cause, they all say. Isn't that a hopeless situation? And I have even met Tibet supporters who say, oh, it's hopeless, nothing, oh, and they go like that. Oh, we love His Holiness, but oh, it's hopeless, they say. And this is not correct. This is from a lack of study. I've been working on a book in this area and doing a little research lately on this, come down out of the clouds of Buddhism, and working on it, and actually it will be impossible for the Chinese to stay long-term in Tibet. It will not be possible. Tibet will definitely be free, not only because it should be free, but because it should rightly be free, but also physically it will be free. There is new research, even Chinese scientists have come up with this research, that living at a high altitude, like 2 or 3 miles altitude, 3,000, 4,000 meter, a person from sea level, they develop a sickness in the heart, where the right chamber of the heart increases in size, pumping so hard to try to get oxygen where there isn't any. And they get what is called chronic mountain sickness. And after a few years, they get sick and they cannot stay there. The Tibetan people have nitric oxide in their blood. Unfortunately, you don't have nitrous oxide. You have otherwise you'd be laughing all the time. But you have nitric oxide in your blood, which carries the oxygen around through the lungs and to the extremities in the body. And also you can conceive children and so forth. This lack of oxygen prevents the Chinese from conceiving children. It's a little bit dangerous if Tibetan women marry Chinese men or vice versa. That's a little dangerous because that produces someone who can manage at high altitude some of the time. But basically, the regular Chinese that they try to move in by the millions will never be able to stay. It's just an ego gesture by the current foolish leadership of China, which will backfire. The danger is, in the process of backfiring, when they then abandon it as impossible, they will leave a terrible mess for the Tibetan people to take care of. For example, they are trying to move all the nomads, all the Dokbas from Golok and from Qinghai, from Amdo area, into little hovel slums and take away their grasslands and put their own horses and all their own commercial herds on there, which is ruining the grassland and creating a desert. Only the Tibetans can take care of Tibet. China's destroying its own rivers' headwaters in Tibet, polluting them. It has already cut way too much of the Tibetan forest, and it can never live up there. If millions of Chinese could live in Tibet, they would have been there 1,000 years ago, trust me. They have a lot of extra people. They can go everywhere. They didn't go there because you can't live there. So therefore, my point is, your job, your mission, your devotion, your cause is not a lost cause. It is a winning cause. People will look back to these days of these small demonstrations, a few thousand people in a city of millions, and they will say they stood there. It's like what they say in India called the act of truth. It's like standing on the truth, no matter how many people against you. And when you do, the truth prevails sooner or later. And we want to see it sooner. We don't want it later because it's too much of a mess. Furthermore, last thing I want to say is that we Americans have very little to say nowadays because we have some moron politicians who are attacking and behaving like colonialists and imperialists themselves, and of course getting nowhere. They're in Iraq and Afghanistan and 125 different countries, and they are going nowhere, wasting all our money. And the Chinese are laughing while they are cutting all the trees and taking the oil by the foolish behavior of our country. Therefore, what you people are doing, which is under the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you are struggling for freedom and truth non-violently. Tenzin Sundu in India is trying to march to Tibet non-violently. You are marching here non-violently because you are not desperate. You know that you will prevail. You teach your children Tibetan because you know they will have to return to Tibet and they will need to know Tibetan. Your grandchildren will need to learn Tibetan because they will return to Tibet and Tibetan will be spoken in Tibet. It will not be lost. So you are a winning cause, but it's a very difficult time now. So what you're doing is totally tremendous. I congratulate you and I thank you. And just never become despaired. Never lose hope. Tibet will definitely be free. It is absolutely certain. Thank you very much.